So let's take on from where we left off. Um, we talked about the hardware, the drivers, and the communication protocols, and now we're back, excuse me, at the application software, which is the RS Logix MicroStarter Lite, a free version of the software that this controller uses, which I can show you where that is located so you can find it. But I'm going to spend a little bit of time here just giving you an overview of the software itself. Notice this is a Windows-driven software, so if you're familiar with Windows applications, this will not be too strange to you. But I want to explain a little bit about things that you will need here. In addition to the normal stuff, file, there you can create a new file, open a new file, save a new file, and so on and so forth, report and something else. Just like any other window application, you could also do copy, paste, delete, append, and so on and so forth. You can view other things, including standard results online when the system's online. Instruction palette that can be put on here, which is a kind of a nice way to know where to find instructions. And then you have also communication, which is important. This could be a way for you to know if your system is being viewed by the programming device or your controller or your computer. So we can come here, hopefully. There you go. And if I expand here, this is kind of a good moment to show you here that not just setting up the driver is important, but verifying that you're able to see on the network both your programming device, your laptop, and your controller. These things need to be talking to each other in order to communicate the ideas, the programs, the processes that I want to communicate. So this is important to have here. And we did that by going to communications, and I'm going to cancel that. You can also go to tools and options, and here you have a chance to one more time select the driver that is required for this type of controller to be able to talk to the laptop and so on and so forth. So various things that you have there. All right, and then of course you have the window where you can arrange things up. You have the help and so on and so forth. So that's a little tour on that. In addition to that, you actually have here a main utility or library of components. And so you want to be on the user tab. That's where all the basic instructions for you to program are located. In addition to that, there's bit instructions, which are nothing else than virtual instructions within the controller, where you won't be able to use hardware-based IOs, inputs and output, but just computer-based instructions, which you could make things happen also with that. We'll talk about that later on. And then you have timer, counters, inputs, and so on and so forth. In due time, we're going to come to those also. So just make sure you're under user tab. And there you have first an icon to create a new rung, an icon to create a rung branch, an icon to put a normally open or what we call examine if closed instruction, an icon to put a normally closed or an examine if open instruction, an icon to an output energize, which is the icon that represents any output, an icon for an output latch, which basically is an instruction that is always on, and then an output unlatch, which is an instruction or output that's always off. So those are the primary programming instructions or commands you're going to be using to get you started on PLC programming. In addition to that, you have the project 3 here that you can deploy and magnify. For instance, I'll go to the controller part. It's an important component. Here in the controller part, you can click on that and look at the controller properties. It tells me that is a BOL 1761 MicroLogic 1000, which is exactly what we have connected here. That's the controller itself. In addition to that, you also have processor status, which tells you what the status of the processor is happening. Probably more information that you can muster right now, but just for basic understanding, so you know what's located. And then this one here under the controller is the IO configuration, kind of an important one, so that you know how to read Additional accessories or modules in your controller. If you're using a large PLC, in our case, it's just a compact PLC. It just showed the controller itself, and that's all there is. But there'll be more items that'll be populated here if you had other controller with other capabilities, other modules, other things, and so on and so forth. I'm going to close this. And then you have the channel configuration, which gives you the speed at which data is flowing back and forth in the controller. Probably a lot of new information, nothing to be worried. The backbone of this course is to get you engaged in knowing how to program this controller. And so that's kind of an important part. You also have program files folder here. All right. For the moment, nothing to worry about it because the program files are actually the files we're going to be creating the programs themselves. I'll explain a little more later on when time comes to explain why we have more than one program, multiple programs, and the reason for them. But also there's an important folder here, which is the data files. The data files is everything that we need to tell the controller what to do. And in this case, we have including a cross-reference, right, which has nothing at this moment. It will be populated when we have a program. We also have an output table, right? The output table tells us the number of outputs on the controller that could be possibly programmed or used. This particular data table shows us 16 points or 16 outputs that I can address. Now, my controller here only has 4 outputs. So that means that even though the data table says that I can address 16, my hardware is only has 4 outputs. All right, let's see how our time is doing. It's getting pretty big, but we're going to finish this up, this overview. Then you have the input table. Once again, it tells you the number of input elements that you can address. Again, our controller here has only 6 inputs. This one tells us that we can address up to 16, actually 32 different inputs. But again, we're going to using just what we can on this controller. Then we have the status. The status, once again, shows the status of the controller. All right. Then we have binary. Binary, it's a lot of virtual computer-based instructions that we could use to do things, make things happen, and I'll come to that also in due time. You also have timers, all right, which is a form of timing events and things within a controller, and all the variety of things that are associated with timer. You also have counters. You can count up events or count down events with the software and be able to download that onto the controller too. We're going to come to that also later. And then you have control instructions, which is other instructions that are used to control advanced components within the controller. And then you have integer, also used to do more advanced programming. So that's all you have in the data files. And I'll come to that at some point. Not without telling you also that you have also force files instructions. The force files, you have output tables and input tables. And basically what this means is that regardless of my input and output conditions, I can control those input and output conditions from the software standpoint to make things happen. We're going to come to that and explain how that happens. So for the moment, I'm going to stop here. It's getting big, and I'll see you in my next video. This is Dr. Rodriguez with the PIB in a box Programmable Logic Controller. See you in a little bit.